start the formal part of our presentation. And in that spirit, I'll be all formal and say, hi, I'm Joe Hage, and I am the leader of the Medical Devices Group. And I love these webinars. The history of this one, a few weeks back, we had a group member who's having a really tough time funding what is a great idea, and he's close to getting FDA clearance, and he's at his wit's end and looking for alternatives. And David Bratbold, the founder of Daily Crowdsource, jumped on that conversation and talked a bit about crowdsourcing, and subsequently said, I'd be happy to offer a free webinar to the group. So first, before we begin at all, David, thank you very much for your generosity, and I'm confident that the group members that have chosen to join us live and those who will listen afterward will get a lot out of this presentation. Also joining us from his busy day, Stephen, I'm not going to try that last name. Thank you.
Oh, we should have encouraged Joe. It's Paljig.
Paljig. Okay. I should have practiced ahead of time. He's the Senior Marketing Director from Kimberly-Clark, and he has a live example how he used crowdsourcing. And not yet on the line, but joining us shortly is Alex Fair. He's the co-founder and CEO of MedStarter, and he focuses specifically in the crowdfunding space, which I'm sure is a topic of interest for many of you on the line. As they say, with no further ado, David, I'll put myself on mute for a while and take it away. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. Yes, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm happy to teach you guys about crowdsourcing. The thing I want everyone to understand is it's a process that can be used for a lot of different areas, but it can really help you cut costs and speed up your work if used properly. And also, just so you guys know, one of the things I do is we run Daily Crowdsource, which is a free platform to learn about crowdsourcing. We also put together a conference. We're doing one at the end of this month. In fact, Stephen's going to be there. Whether or not you come, though, it's my opportunity to put in value in this hour. I want you guys to walk away saying, okay, I know what crowdsourcing is. I know how to use it. At the very end, if you stay to the end, we're going to provide some research. We've got 2 research reports for you. Does that sound fair? Great. You know, I'd love to give this to you. So crowdsourcing basically is getting a crowd of people to help you with a task that used to take one person. An example that may or may not be in line with what you need, but it really helps you understand it, is a logo design. Traditionally, you would go to a freelancer, an agency, do it yourself. You would get some person to create a logo for you. Nowadays, you can go to a crowd of people and get 100, 1,000 people to each make a custom logo for you, and you pick the best one. Now, that's just an example. It can be used in a lot of different aspects, and we'll get into that. But the point I want you to understand is crowdsourcing is a work process, just like freelancing, outsourcing, or even hiring an assistant. Once you understand the concept, you can realize it goes beyond just logos into processing work, such as research. If you wanted to get the emails of all the top oncologists in the country, crowdsourcing can help you do it a lot faster than just hiring someone to do it. Now, with that, we don't want you to get caught up in the definition of crowdsourcing. Anytime you're using a crowd, it's very good. Okay, so crowdsourcing itself can be broken down into 4 different areas, and each one works a little bit differently. Microtasks is taking a project and breaking it up into steps that can be done in about 3 seconds to a minute, and you usually pay somebody about a half a cent, a penny, 5 cents. An example is image tagging. There was a company that needed 400,000 images to be tagged. Rather than hire someone to tag each one, they hired a crowd. 400,000 people each tagged one image. It saves substantial money. It can also be used for research and data validation. Macro tasks, that's more of the innovation aspect. GE, for example, is opening up to the crowd, hey, we want to cure cancer. And it's looking for specialists to dive in where they see fit in the program. They get to dive in on their own. You're looking for specialists outside of your network. Crowdfunding, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with and know you're all interested in, that's going to a crowd of people to get them to fund your project. Whether in return you're giving them a reward, some equity, debt, donations. There's various different aspects, and Alex will go in depth on this. And contests, and this is in the creative realm usually. Getting a logo designed, we'll go over some of this in just a minute, but getting a logo designed, business names, it's kind of a winner-take-all. You put the call out there of what you need, you set the budget, and people will compete for what you need basically. Now, how are the world's best brands using it, or AKA how can you, med dev companies, use crowdsourcing? There are several different uses. I'll list here a couple of the common uses. First one is graphic design. You might not need a logo, but maybe you need to design your website or get a brochure, a sales brochure that you're going to hand out to physicians, as you'll see here on the right. Or on the left, these are trade show display designs. Any type of design work you need. It's very common to use a platform. The best platform we found is 99designs.com. So it's not really building your product for you. It's once you need to start marketing it. Rather than hiring someone, you can go and get the best quality work. The brilliance is you set your budget for each project. So you say, hey, I need a trade show design. I can spend $600. You'll get 50, 100 different designs to choose from. These can be other sales materials, direct mailers, just about anything that can be designed. Let me know if this isn't clear. It's fundamental that you understand the core concept before you learn where else it can be applied. Another area is video. You may not think I need video or any sort of advertising, but if you need a demonstration video, much like the one you should be seeing here, you might be real competent in creating a medical device, but how about when it comes to present it to physicians? Do you want to spend your time developing these videos or find a professional to do it for you? Open innovation. This is something Stephen is going to talk about in more depth, but providing feedback through the innovation development process ends up a higher chance of success once you go to market. Another common use is blog post creation. You might be thinking, well, I don't do a blog. Any type of text content you have to create, again, rather than it taking away from your time where you're building the company, your marketing side of things where you are creating maybe a weekly newsletter to keep the physicians in the loop, creating a knowledge base or a FAQ. Crowds can develop this content for you, and you might be thinking, well, in the healthcare field, we need specialists. You'd be surprised what's out there. Servio has a crowd of nurses who, by day, work as a nurse, still up to their registrations and everything, and then by night, they'll develop blog posts, newsletters, articles. So it's a great way to get your product out there before it's ready to start selling. There are several other common uses as I'll list here. Again, the takeaway is that crowdsourcing is a work process. It works across all industries and fields, from translation to landing page optimization. It's just like freelancing, outsourcing, or hiring an assistant. So think about this. What part of your business do you wish you could outsource, but afraid that the quality would suffer? In that scenario, crowdsourcing could be a very good opportunity to explore. It's a better way to solve existing business problems. With this webinar, I want you to understand I may not hit a specific application you can use, but I want you to learn the concept of how crowds work for you. Then you can start to apply it to your own business. Just to give you a couple of metrics, I know you like numbers. eBay wanted to do a translation scenario. So they translated 1 million words, where it's typically 23 cents a word to get translation. Because the crowd translated it, it was only 2.5 cents a word, a savings of 90%. If you're wanting to do video production, maybe you wanted to do a TV ad, a $250,000 video production can be done for $60,000 with crowdsourcing. Or even on the small end, if you wanted to do research, using Mechanical Turk, if you were to hire an employee at just minimum wage, $8 an hour, you could go through a crowd called Mechanical Turk, where it's on average $1.71 per hour, or on up to about $4 an hour, depending on what's being done. But that's anywhere up to about a 79% savings. Now at this point, we're going to talk about crowdfunding. I believe Alex is on the line. Alex, are you available?
Hi, this is Alex Fair. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, Alex, go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and run your slides for you, but the crowd is here and they want to hear about crowdfunding and all the different aspects.
Okay, great. Well, hello everybody. My name is Alex Fair. I set up a website called MedStarter, but we're not here to just talk about MedStarter today. We're talking a little bit about how crowds can enable funding, awareness, adoption, and other great stuff for your company, your product, your idea. And so I don't think I'm telling anybody anything really new here that that traditional sources of funding for medical devices and all and many other things is drying up. You know, they haven't gotten the return on investment. Institutionals doing a lot better. Government sources are changing. So you really have a different sort of environment. And the real problem we see is that as a VC or angel, you know, it's hard to say what's going to work, you know, what's going to be successful, what's going to get past regulatory approval. And in the end, it just stifles innovation because you really have limitation in the capital that's available, not just from NIH or what have you, but also from, you know, more traditional sources, you know, angels and VCs and such. So making healthcare continue to suck, as we say. So you can go to the next slide. So we actually started MedStarter when we were inspired after seeing what could happen with a Kickstarter project. So Eric Michigovsky created a device that connected, and everybody knows this probably, I'm sure, but this one set the record. So he created a device that talked to his iPhone that allowed him to check his email and do some Dick Tracy type stuff. And he raised, you know, $10 million and got 68,000 customers, which is pretty amazing for a 6-week campaign. So I talked to Eric and did some preliminary research, and we actually launched MedStarter in a beta format on the 4th of July. And if you want to go to the next slide, we actually have had a whole bunch of projects with a lot of success. But what's really not obvious to most people is that even though you have some success online, you get about 40 times that level of success offline. So yes, you might raise $13,000 online, but you're actually very oftentimes, if you've gotten the right people engaged, raised, you know, millions offline or been acquired or what have you. So some companies became de facto standards, you know, becoming the data set that every, you know, directory wanted to have and use. We've helped start nonprofit foundations. We've helped create conferences. And while we're not the entire story, we're an amazing vehicle to actually get the story out. When I say we, I don't mean just MedStarter. It could be Indiegogo. It could be Kickstarter. Well, Kickstarter doesn't do healthcare projects, but it's basically allows you to sort of transparently say, here's what we're doing, here's why we're doing it, here's how it can help you, here's how you can get involved. If you really care about this solution, so let's say somebody has prostate cancer and you have a new device that, you know, helps freeze and take care of, you know, stage 4 tumors or what have you. Anybody who might be interested in that will you know, get involved in it, even if it's just tweeting it out to a bunch of people who are involved in a prostate cancer community. This happened with us with this Braggs project, which you can see in the bottom of the screen, where these two ladies, both of whom had double mastectomies and reconstruction, couldn't find a bra that fit. So they said they got out the sewing machine, and neither of these people were professional seamstresses. One was an economist, the other was a stay-at-home mom, and they created something and said, hey guys, what do you think? You know, we think it works a lot better. Do you want to buy one of these bras? When they only had a prototype, they didn't have a manufacturer, they didn't have really everything worked out. So they raised $12,000 online, they raised another $25,000 offline, they got a deal with the U.S. Army, they got distributorships, they got into magazine, they got into ABC News. And this is the kind of stuff that happens to pretty much every project, stuff like this. Refresh
Alex, this is Joe. I want to interject because this, having looked at the whole presentation in advance, this is the page that really made me stop. And would you share with the group how did somebody make 12,000 online and so much more offline? Is it that this serves as some kind of makeshift website / landing page so people can be directed somewhere online? Is that the essence of it?
That's exactly it, Joe, and that's a really great question because it's so easy, and you can actually go look at the real project here. If you click on it, you can see what it looks like. Thanks, this is great. So right now, there's 4 kinds of crowdfunding that exist, and these really kind of mimic reality. I mean, they're not really that different from what we do in real life. There's donation-based, which is like charity. There's rewards-based. This is a rewards-based campaign. There's equity-based, and there's credit-based. And what you see here is that Karen, Kristen, the Braggs girls, are telling a story about their life and their mother's life and what's good about it and what's problematic, and how they had this problem with the bra that you can see here in the first picture, and how they solved the problem. And people got behind them. They got excited about the story. They had already been doing walkathons and things like that, for Komen Scarf or whatever, for Komen. And so it already had sort of a community around them for this kind of thing. And because equity-based crowdfunding is not currently legal in the United States, all we really can do is get the donations going, right? So that's Kara. So if the equity was legal at this point, then we'd probably be able to put a "I want to invest in this project," button onto these pages. But it's not. So we're stuck with just equity and rewards based. But all that other stuff happens offline. So when Kara presented, at HHS on this concept, the head of the U.S. Army's healthcare innovation area, whose wife happens to be the breast cancer facilitator for the Army, when they saw it, they said, "This is great. We have a lot of women, in the armed forces who, whose either wives or themselves as soldiers had problems, and this is something that we want." The same thing happens with ABC News. I mean, I don't know how ABC News found out about the project, but they called them. Same thing with the New York Times. Melinda Emerson, who writes a column for the New York Times, found out about this project, and she called them. So we serve as a platform, and they sent all of their energy and their time and their efforts to everybody saying, "Hey, go see our campaign." A lot of people funded them, but just as important, a lot of people saw them, wrote about them in their trade journals, and of course in the more mass media publications.
Alex, let me ask another question, please. We have Ioannis, I hope I pronounced that properly, from Munich on the line. So equity funding is not permissible in the U.S. Can you tell us, are you aware of how it's treated outside the U.S., and could a medical device company based out of anywhere but the U.S. Offer equity?
Absolutely. There are rules that allow equity-based crowdfunding in places other than the United States, and that is obviously an option available, but there is no really successful equity-based crowdfunding site outside the U.S. We hope, to be launching that kind of thing soon. Also in the U.S., you can do accredited investor-based equity crowdfunding presently. It's sort of a gray area. We're kind of staying away from it until it's a little clearer, but that shouldn't be very long now. It should just be another couple of months before it becomes a viable option. But for now, it's working pretty well offline for our clients. So we're very happy to facilitate that. We also are running challenges which bring corporations into the picture. So here's a couple of just medical device projects. I don't consider the bra a medical device, and even these are sort of edgy. I mean, it's not like these are kidney washing machines, although that is another project that's coming up. So here you have a couple of fitness devices that have been successfully funded, allowing them to do their first production runs. And as you know, 5,000 or 2,000 isn't very much to do a production run, but it's enough in these cases for them to get their factories moving and get them in conversations with the Sports Authority and Dick's and wherever that they've already been having those discussions, but it takes it to the next level. So the Misfit Shine is a great example from, you can go back to the other slide still. The Misfit Shine is a great example from another site. He raised over $800,000. We consulted with him and helped him get his project together, but then he went and put it on Indiegogo, which has a much larger audience than us, although not more per project. But if you get to the front page in Indiegogo, great things happen. So, and then a Kickstarter campaign. Kickstarter doesn't generally do healthcare projects, but if it's very consumer-friendly, easy thing to do, they did this back posture sensor that connected to your iPhone app, and they raised over $200,000. But it's getting better all the time. So, so the Jobs Act, which is what really sort of started a lot of this hubbub, was passed last April, and it was supposed to be defined in terms of equity by January. They're behind schedule. People are saying by the end of this year. I'm thinking probably by Q3 because it's already in review period. So, but now with the new SEC head, Mary Jo White, you know, she's pretty tough, but she's going to probably hit the ground running, we hope, and hopefully get this passed and get it down to just a couple of months until it's clear exactly what the rules are. But basically, it allows accredited investors to invest a certain amount and everybody else to invest another amount for the things that they care about. So managing that relationship is an important thing. So what else do we have here slide-wise? So we think that where healthcare crowdfunding fits in is really early on in your process. You know, and there's a slide that isn't here, but one of the things we say, and is very true, is that we don't just drive funding, we drive awareness, we drive adoption, we drive testers and beta testers. If you're doing a clinical trial, if you need a multi-centered clinical trial and you need other people to actually get involved in your project and sign up patients, those are the kinds of things we can do. It's not just crowdfunding, it's also crowdsourcing and crowd feedback and getting a lot of interest and traction and getting partners involved. So your average project gets 2.3 partners and 1.4 stories written about them, in addition to a little bit of funding online and sometimes a lot of funding offline. It fits in with a lot of your other activities. So we call this.
Let me interject really quick if you don't mind. Sure. One of the things I love about crowdfunding is, yeah, it's great to get the money, but I think it has an even better benefit of doing market testing. Exactly. It's one thing to go out and ask people, hey, do you think that this product is a good idea? But we all know it's very common for somebody to tell you yes to your face, whether they are or aren't going to buy. But with crowdfunding, you're saying, hey, do you like it? Okay, give me the money. And the money really shows you how much people will pay and also if there's a demand for it. In fact, there's been venture capitalists that say every new business should crowdfund.
You're absolutely correct, and I mean, I have a horrible story to tell you about like this. I created this company called CareMD, and I did exactly that. I walked around to 2,600 doctors, knocked on their doors, and said, "Hey, do you want to do price negotiation online for your services?" And most of them told me to get the hell out of there. But 100 of them did say, "Yes, that is something we would do because we really don't like getting paid $30 to save somebody's life." You know, being a doctor these days is not easy. So I went ahead and built the site, got those 100 doctors set up. 30 of them by that time had said, no, I don't want to do it. It took me 2 years to sign up another 200-300 doctors and never made very money on the site at all. And I actually went and tried to crowdfund it and found not only did people not like the idea on the physician side, they didn't want to pay for it, but the patients didn't want to pay for it either. Now, I had already had 500,000 people come to the site and look for something.
Right.
But nobody wanted to pay for anything. So it failed as a crowdfunding project in 45 days, but it took me 2-3 years to figure that out, in real life, and a couple $100,000. So I guess my point is that, yes, you're absolutely right. You get to test, you get to get feedback. You can list 6 different versions of your product, and it costs nothing to. Or ways to market something. So if you have the bra and you want it to sell, them in green and blue and black, and this is a very simplistic example, but if you wanted to, and you want to see which color to make first, you can very easily tell because 2 people buy green, 10 people buy black, and 1 person buys pink. So there's a sweet spot in your company's existence where crowdfunding makes sense, and so obviously it's early on. But if you've already raised $12 million and you just want to see what packaging people want or things like that, there's also other points in time where you can do some pre-selling. That example of the Shine Misfit Wearables device, they already got $12 million. They already have John Scully on their board. It's the guy from Agamatrix, Sonny Vu, who already is, a winner in this category. he just wanted to get some pre-sales and get some feedback from actual customers. Well, he got a couple thousand sales, and he's doing great. So these are some of the partners that have come into the site and found partners and found products that they wanted to buy. Bausch & Lomb bought a company outright. So is Health and Reach, and Medlion, adopted some products. Agamatrix partnered directly for a clinical trial. HHS has a prototype that they're playing around with to see if they can find better ways for people to select innovations. And all sorts of other great stuff is going on, especially with GE. Maternova gets behind projects here. Wireless, wants to talk to anybody that we work with. So there's about 48 partnerships that have happened through the system. 24 just for one company called DocGraph, which basically became the de facto standard for physician referral data, pretty much in 6 weeks. So,
excellent. Alex, I really appreciate it. We're going to move on to Steve at the moment, but I'm sure there's going to be plenty of questions for you at the end.
Okay, I'm here. Thanks for having me.
So thank you very much, Steve. This is Steve, Senior Marketing Director from Kimberly-Clark, who's going to share some insights with his role at Huggies Moms Inspired.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to just pose a question here on the first slide, which is, from a corporate perspective, why would a company like Kimberly-Clark that does about $15 billion worth of sales globally with likely, quite substantial R&D budgets look to the crowd? And I hope that at the end of my few slides, I've given you some perspective on how we've answered that question and how we're really benefiting from taking on that challenge of figuring out how to incorporate the crowd in our innovation process. Next slide, David. So I want to spend just a couple minutes on this slide and get you to think about how a big corporate entity like Kimberly-Clark typically innovates and the way we've used the crowd to co-create and innovate a different way. Because I think the challenge for many of us, and I think it's exemplified throughout this talk, is we as innovators have to come up with great innovations, but we also need to continually challenge the way we go about innovating. So if you just spend a second for me under the column titled the customer-focused innovation, this is the way a company like a consumer goods company like Kimberly-Clark typically creates new stuff, right? The central entity that's doing the innovating is Kimberly-Clark. It's the organization, right? And the degree of our customer or consumer involvement is we're working for them to bring innovation. And we, as the innovator, are playing that role. That's what the organization is doing. It's innovating. Now, it's really easy to control. I can create, an innovation process on paper. I can have milestones. I can create budgets. I can predict timelines. And that's nice and that's comfortable. However, there's an issue with that approach. And we found that issue is really scarcity of really great ideas. Because we can only do as much innovation as our budgets and capabilities allow. We can only come up with as many great ideas as the people within our laboratories have. We found that it was a good but not sufficient approach to deal with the challenges that we were facing in our business. So we said, hey, let's do an experiment all the way on the right-hand side around co-creation. And I like to do the comparison and contrast because while it reflects the benefits of a corporation like ours doing co-creation, it also represents the challenges. So you shift. Instead of the organization doing the innovation, we're really having our consumers, in this case, doing the innovation. And instead of doing innovation for consumers, it's innovation by consumers with us enabling that innovation out there in the crowd to happen. And so instead of becoming the innovator, we're really forced to adopt a different role, which is that of the coordinator and, in some cases, investors in that innovation that's going out there. Now, you can imagine, for a company like Kimberly-Clark, there's some issues, and I think the biggest we faced is it's almost impossible to control this. In fact, you can't think about managing this innovation process in the same way as others, and lack of control or a different level of control can be a big issue for a corporation to deal with. But we deal with it because there's a huge benefit, and that benefit is captured there in the bottom right-hand corner, which is the needs and solutions are defined by the users. We get better solutions with a more clear understanding of the consumer need, and we get more of them than we could ever hope to produce in our laboratories. The other big benefit is, while we're great within our baby care business at designing diapers and wipes, we know nothing about some of the other innovations you'll see later in the presentation. So we get into completely new areas of business where we can take our brand and create further value for our shareholders that we never would have been able to even touch, think about over the cafeteria table without being linked into the crowd. Next slide, David, please. So I got a question for all of you, and this is kind of what I've used in many forums, including with the U.S. military, as I've talked about this program in crowdsourcing, to say, what's your reality around innovation? You know, if the question is, you know, how good is your knowledge of your consumer or your customer? Do you have perfect knowledge? Well, if you've got that figured out, if you know it very well, you might be able to do an internal innovation program and get to something of value. That's not the situation in my world. You know, I can see future of my markets without ambiguity or uncertainty. You know, the answer there is no for me, and that makes using the crowd to create multiple bets and multiple scenarios so attractive. You know, all the best ideas occur within the walls of my business. Certainly not true. Going to the crowd gets at that idea richness that I'm lacking. Resources. Right? Going to the crowd is incredibly efficient in terms of the spend I get and the opportunities business-wise that it creates. Perspective. You know, one of our grant recipients gets $15,000 in our first phase of funding. For them, it makes a world of difference. I think Alex offered some great perspective earlier in the talk. For us, $15,000 is the cost of a couple consumer focus groups when we do market research. So for the cost of 2 focus groups, I get the chance to fund, get transactional learning, and the opportunity to watch a business grow and potentially acquire it in an area I would have never been able to explore as a corporation. It's a huge return at very high leverage. And then picking out the best innovation. I would say this. I think Alex mentioned this early on when he talked about funding as an early indicator. We have an even earlier indicator, which is when we have mom entrepreneurs apply for membership into our innovation community. Just the applications we gather, let alone those businesses we start to grant and journey with, just those applications teach us where the hotbeds of innovation on the marketplace are. It is a great market sensing, market research technique. So if you're in a reality or you're talking to somebody that you believe has this perceived reality, I think these are all really great salient points around crowdsourcing. Next slide, David, please.
Steve, before I do, I want to interject something. I hear a lot of people that say, well, yeah, that's great. That works for your community. That works for moms. But, you know, we deal with physicians. We can't do that. But one of the things I found is that's not necessarily that's not true. It's no matter who your crowd is, your target market is, the more you get them and engage them, the more they can open up. In fact, one story I heard, and I'm purely regurgitating what was told to me. It was from Lufthansa, and I know we've got at least one German on the line here, so hopefully this isn't offensive. But this is what they told me. They said, we never wanted to crowdsource because we feel like we are Germans, we are proud, we are the smart you know, engineers, and we should be able to develop this in our own company of Lufthansa. But there was one person in the company that wanted to do co-creation, and he finally did the project, and they got so much good advice that his boss said, okay, you did it once now do it 4 times this year. So they've gone from, you know, the pride of, well, we should have the smartest talent in our company, to realizing that no matter how much talent you have, there's always some random diverse perspective outside.
And I think that's actually a great transition, David, to these next couple of charts, which is just some examples of other entities that have been able to co-create with the crowd. I mean, you know, I put us up there from Huggies from an aspirational standpoint, but you've got businesses including Starbucks that creates with their user community, Lego Mindstorms and the Mindstorm kits that come out being a product of their community, And then even, when you get to the penguin representing Linux, and you think about that operating system, all created out of the crowd, and now something that's a bedrock for many of the applications that run that we never see in the background of the business community. And I think that's some of the variety of where crowdsourcing has made a difference. And I think you made a great comment early on, David, which said, this is a process. I wouldn't say you should look at the Huggies example and say you do X, Y, and Z, and you get this result. I think it's a matter of looking how the principles are applied to your business situation to give you the benefits you desire. So think in terms of questions and principles, not in terms of specific examples. And if you go to the next chart, I like to use this one because, if you ask me a place where crowdsourcing would never work, I would probably think about things like the U.S. defense establishment and sourcing of tools for the warfighter. Because I think about the Pentagon bureaucracy, I think about the entrenched advantages that companies like FMC and Northrop Grumman might have, and yet there are even some surprises there. So I wanted to share this one with all of you just to shake up your paradigm a little bit. In the photograph, what you see there is a experimental combat supply vehicle, completely crowdsourced. Crowdsourced to an entity, and there's the logo called Local Motors in Phoenix, Arizona. I believe they have somewhere between 50 and 100,000 members of their crowd who all deal with automotive design, either in a kind of total standpoint or from a critical subcomponent standpoint, like experts in electrical, experts in emissions, experts in in powertrain, and things like that. DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, was looking for a different way to get to this prototype supply vehicle. Local Motors was able to, actually won the bid for the development of this. And they were able to actually get the design of the vehicle established and approved through DARPA in 1 month based upon culling through and selecting the best of 126 general design approaches they got from their crowd, and then get the actual prototype vehicle built in 3 months based upon leveraging the individual design and manufacturing capabilities of their crowd. Quite an amazing accomplishment. You see J Motors there talking to somebody who was very interested in what was going on, President Obama, at a symposium on innovation at Carnegie Mellon University. So, again, these principles can work in different situations, and I think I'm offering you, here's how it works for moms on Huggies that are developing stuff, but the same principles and approaches can work in the context of the U.S. Defense Establishment, DARPA, and yet crowdsourcing making a huge difference there. So if I can go to the next slide, David. And if you could pull up the first bullet point. So why does a company like Kimberly-Clark get invested in crowdsourcing? One is, I think we're recognizing that as a corporate entity, our pace of innovation cannot keep up with the increasing demands of the marketplace. And, as an innovator, running an innovation organization, I'm just not getting any more money or more people to do so. The best innovators, as I challenged us all before, really are about thinking about not just delivering the business results, but also innovating the way we innovate. The world's a really complex place, okay? And I think this notion that we can measure and predict with accuracy is foolish. So as major companies, we need to think about how to place a lot of small, smart bets. Crowdsourcing is huge in terms of the capability to do that. And the last piece is, it's the era of the democratization of innovation. Innovations are no longer exclusive to large industrial, government, or academic research enterprises. They happen there, and it's an absolutely valuable process. But I think you're foolish as a corporate entity if you're not exploring the innovations that's occurring outside of those walls. So if I could have the last chart, I just want to show some of the valuable innovations delivered by moms who are starting up businesses. Typically startups that are being starved by not getting capital to expand, that we are serving through the Mom Inspired program. These are some of our grant recipients. Now, each of these women don't just get $15,000 in funding. They get to join the community, interact with other innovators in the community, get some coaching and mentoring from experts at Kimberly-Clark in specific areas like design or technology. And they will also be eligible to get additional rounds of funding through Kimberly-Clark and our angel investor partners out there in the marketplace who are signing up for the program too. So we're bringing kind of this element of, I'll call it semi-crowdfunding, into now an environment where we've crowdsourced innovation for our brand. So what are some of those unanticipated innovations we found that as a diaper and wipe manufacturer really wow us? There's a woman in San Diego, California. Her name is Allison Phillips. She has just had her U.S. patent granted on the Chilty Cup. If any of you have small children and they try to learn how to drink and they're drinking out of a Chilty Cup, you probably have seen them spill, and they spill because to get the liquid out of the cup, they need to turn the cup 180 degrees in their mouth back, and it inevitably fails in some way. Allison says, I can fix that, change the internal geometry of a cup, put a small piece of plastic there in the corner, and so just pouring out, so the cup never gets vertical to get the liquid out. As an innovator, I'm embarrassed, right? And I didn't think about it and retire based upon that idea. Allison has been able to get a patent on that design, set up a supply chain into China to source that product, and we're growing along with Allison in the development of her business. Now, for those of you in the medical device community, I'll offer one more example before I kind of stop talking and turn back over to David. Amy Baxter is a pediatrician in Atlanta, Georgia. And Amy, as a mother and as a pediatrician, really appreciates the fact that shots hurt. Not only do they cause pain to the infant or the toddler, but they cause great discomfort and anxiety to the mother, and even in many cases, the pediatrician administering the injection. So Amy's come up with Buzzy. It's a pain relief device. It uses sound, it uses vibration and cold to, I'll call it, this is my marketer's understanding, distract the nerves from the injection site and that point of pain. Through our funding, Amy has been able to develop a very robust set of clinical data that shows pain relief using this device and filling a need that as a brand we would have never first recognized, found a way to address, let alone develop something that works in the clinical data behind it. And now we're just really proud to be able to stand behind this device that Amy's been able to develop and bring to the marketplace. So I'll stop right there and say, you know, we're really happy with our crowdsourcing experience. It doesn't replace what we're doing at the corporate entity, but it provides a major complement, particularly around getting into new business ventures and being able to place multiple bets in the marketplace at relatively low cost and investment to us, but at a huge return for the people that get involved with our crowd. If you're interested in our program some more, our website is www.huggiesmominspired.com. You can go take a look. And thanks for the opportunity to speak.
Thanks, Stephen. As you guys might start to see is, you know, crowdsourcing doesn't necessarily replace anything. It really augments what you're doing. It's really there to help out. So I'll quickly wrap up before we get into the Q&A and I give you guys a copy of our research. There are some benefits to crowdsourcing. Is you get diversity. It's not about just getting a ton of people to do stuff for you. It's when you get a lot of people, there's going to be some diverse perspectives in there, and those are those golden nuggets you're looking for. Also, as a direct result, is you end up with better quality. Again, you're not looking for the masses, but that one specialist in the masses. As it falls along the bell curve, you're going to get a lot of junk and a lot of good stuff, and you're just looking for that top X% of good stuff, and crowdsourcing helps you sift through that. Another really good thing is, like Steve was saying, is that you are engaging your potential customers. Not just engaging audiences, but you're engaging the exact segment you want to reach. So you're hearing from them during the process, and when it's time to sell, you're already connected. You're literally turning around and saying, here's what you wanted. Here it is. There are some problems. Crowdsourcing is not a miracle cure. So I'll list these off, but they're all manageable by getting your community engaged first. Crowdsourcing can be difficult to manage. It's just like hiring 1,000 employees. There's going to be some management to it. Social backlash, if you exploit your crowd, they can get very vocal on social media, and a crowd can turn into an angry mob very quickly. As long as you're genuine, you can avoid that. cost creep. Just because you can save 90% doesn't mean that's total savings. You're going to have some management labor, some prizes if you're giving them out. You know, in Kimberly Clark's case, they're giving out $15,000 grants. So just be mindful of the surrounding costs. Inconsistent branding, again, you're giving up control to the crowd, and they're going to give you a lot of good ideas, and you can easily get swayed in, oh, that's a great idea, without realizing, does that fall in line with our mission and our branding? So just be mindful of that. Always consider, is this in line with our core branding? Lower quality, again, you're going to get low quality and good quality. You just need to make sure you're identifying what's the good and what's the bad. When Obama wanted to, quote-unquote, crowdsource campaign initiatives, the #1 result or response was legalize marijuana. So he just had to say, hey, great, thanks, let's just push that one aside and move on to the other ones. And there is legal exposure, but it's just like hiring a freelancer. Much like a freelancer could copy something and pass it off, the crowd can do it. Luckily, a lot of technology and platforms include legal protection in terms of contracts. There's generally a lot of that in place. Okay, as I wrap up in summary, just a couple of takeaways. Crowdsourcing, again, is a work process. It's a way you can process work. It's not a standardized process, as Steve was saying. It's just a new way to transact, process, get things done. It works across all industries and fields, from medical device to mom's products to translation to advertising, just about anything. If you can hire someone to do it, you can probably crowdsource it. Again, it solves existing business problems. These are the benefits: improved quality, speed, engagement. You've got the crowd, means you've got scalability. If you have a burst in demand, you can process it right away with your crowd. And in most instances, it can lower your costs.
David, I have to interject here. I've been doing these webinars for a while. I have never seen 100% of the crowd stick around to the end. You guys did a great job. And I'll tell you, not only did I learn some things, but 2 slides ago, or 1 slide ago, you were talking about some of the things that can go bad here, your last point, legal exposure and the like. I know you're going to talk to us about Crowdopolis, which I would totally go to if I could. Will these points be touched upon there? Because I think you guys kind of whet our appetite, and now I have even more questions about it.
Absolutely, and thanks for the compliments. This is a very, very important topic, so I can't take full compliments of, you know, hey, this is all me. It's really the topic. Crowdsourcing is being used by a lot of people. It's actually gone reverse to the adoption life cycle. The federal government is one of the first users of crowdsourcing. As you saw with that DARPA, there's actually a website called challenge.gov where it's a platform for every federal government branch to post a challenge. NASA's on there. They're giving out 34 million already in challenges. Actually, the lady who runs that website will be speaking at Crowdopolis, so we're going to learn some great stuff. All of these topics here, everything we talked about is going to go in depth at Crowdopolis. I actually, I spent a lot of time. I handpicked all the speakers because it's going to cover all these different aspects of, you know, legal exposure. Steve's going to talk about how to commercialize your open innovation projects, I believe. Steve was at LA's and we wanted him back. He's actually a really good thought leader in this field. So yeah, to answer your question, we are going to cover all those. And as I wrap up again, it can go bad, so just keep in mind it's not a miracle cure. I don't like, there are people going around saying, hey, crowdsourcing is awesome, it's just going to do everything, which it will, but you got to be mindful. Everything has some drawbacks. Okay, so just a couple more slides. Here's the research, and I'm sure this will come out in a follow-up email, but write these links down. I don't think you can click on your screen, obviously. But these are a couple of research reports I did in 2012, really to get to the heart of the numbers. Just to show you, it is very new, but the companies that are adopting crowdsourcing are doing it in a big way. Microsoft. Hey
David, I came off mute for a moment. I'm sending a link to the crowd in the chat box now, so you can click on them there. Thanks.
Oh, perfect. I would have thought of that if I could multitask, but yeah, from Microsoft is building a system they translated Microsoft Windows 8, I think, in 130 different languages through crowdsourcing. Walmart has all of their online product pages cleansed and optimized by crowds. So it's crazy to see these big companies, even small ones like nonprofits or government agencies, startups, just about anybody is relinquishing control to crowds, taking advantage of the scalability, all the cost benefits, and all the quality controls that go along with it. And so that does lead me to my last point is we are doing an event called Crowdopolis. I hope in this 60 minutes we've really helped you understand what crowdsourcing is, how it's being used, how powerful it can be. February 27th and 28th, just at the end of this month, I am doing an event in New York. Would love to have you guys come. I know Stephen's going to be presenting, as you can see here, Microsoft, Walmart, GE. These people are going to be talking about how they're using crowdsourcing for various different reasons. And we'd love to have you there. I'd love to give you guys, I know Joe wanted me to give you guys a discount. If you register, I think it's in the next 48 hours, and you put in promo code MDG13, we'll give you a 20% off registration. We'd love to have you guys there. And the first 3 to register with that promo code, I will personally invite to our invitation-only VIP pre-party. It's going to take place the night before on the 26th. If you want to look at more of the...
Thank you. Is it MDG-13 or just MDG-13?
Just MDG-13.
Okay.
I can type it here into the
I'm
chat
setting
box.
it up too.
If you visit crowdopolis.net, that will also get you to this section of our website where you can see. This is Karen. She's the one who runs crowdfunding for the entire federal government, all of the branches. Anyone can post a project. And I believe DARPA is actually doing another car on this website. I feel like I saw something. NASA is doing some crowdsourcing. They do quite a bit, from video to right now they are trying to optimize the International Space Station. They're going to talk about that as well. Yeah, I really want to emphasize the value of this event. If you guys can come, we'd love to have you. If there's anything keeping you from attending, please send me an email, david@dailycrowdsource.com. My mission is I love to help people. Daily Crowdsource's mission is to help people understand what crowdsourcing is and how it can be used. So please reach out to me. At this point, we're going to turn it over to questions. If you have any questions, let's go ahead and answer them.
Yeah, we have some in the queue, and I'll open the mics for you, Steve, and Alex. And the number one question that's come in 3 times from 3 different people, it's all around IP. What about my idea? Who's going to steal it? What if Medtronic tries to patent it? What's going to happen to my idea?
Alex, you want to field that one?
Yeah, I can field that one. So, when we have massively exposed projects, and we strongly encourage everyone to protect their IP, not to put any trade secrets out there. Essentially, you're appealing to audiences of patients or providers, partners. You don't have to show your technical diagrams. You don't have to give away your secret sauce. And we strongly encourage all of our clients to protect, even if it's just a provisional patent. And we all know that they're not very strong, but you have to be sensible about these things. And we don't encourage people to really sort of give away their secrets, and nobody needs to know that anyway. So that's pretty much our approach. But of course, we can't really take any responsibility for what happens because everybody comes in. If you get 17,000 people looking at your video, somebody might be inspired to do a derivative product, and that's the risk you take.
Steve, Kimberly-Clark, multi-billion-dollar company, is doing it. What do you have to say about this? What about my IP?
Well, I think there's actually a couple of principles we follow that frame our approach. The first is, and I would have never thought this was going to work, before even applying for a grant, we actually have the applicant read and digitally sign a framework agreement that goes a pretty far way in protecting everybody's interests here, because we've got the applicant's interests, we've got Kimberly-Clark's interest? Is there any research going on in Kimberly-Clark that might be similar? You could imagine some of those issues. And so what we've been able to do working with our legal team is actually start by having a basic collaboration agreement, I'll call it that, that is the front end of our application process. And we've been able to write it and execute it in such a way that our mom entrepreneurs actually see that as a positive and not an encumbrance. And I think it's actually enabled the number of applications we've gotten. So I'd say the front end of the process has some legal protections built into it. The second piece is, as we review applications, it's really important to us to be able to have the reviewer as being firewalled from the rest of the innovation that's going on inside the organization. So we don't judge the quality of a grant application based upon a popularity vote with all of the other stuff that's going on inside of Kimberly-Clark. We have a very strong set of operating principles inside the company. The last piece around IP is this, though, which kind of frames our commercial approach, which is we do not seek to really understand or get into or acquire the IP at the beginning of our relationship with these companies. We actually prefer for them to really run their business, including the intellectual property aspect of it, according to their plan, according to their script. Because frankly, one of the things we found is a big company like ours getting involved too soon just screws things up. We don't have the entrepreneurial skill set that these companies do. And so the intellectual property from acquiring it, inspecting it, comes later in the process versus at the front end for us, because we're intentionally taking a more hands-off approach with our crowd and just providing some guardrails around how you use our brand and things like that kind of channel people without being overly directive and prescriptive of what they're doing.
And Steve, who owns the IP? Does Kimberly-Clark own it, or do the moms own it?
The moms own it. We want them to keep it while the business is growing. And if at some point we decide we want to participate in a commercial model which mandates we have the intellectual property, like we want to license in their innovation, brand it ourselves, make it ourselves, then we'll go and we'll do that negotiation. But we're open to many commercial models in some where we would never acquire the intellectual property.
And that's why I brought that up, because Kimberly-Clark does it in a way that's fascinating to me. Most other people want to hold on to the IP, but you guys let the moms hold on to it, and you just partner with them. So for people who are listening, there are other ways where you can retain the IP. And then to move along, I know Jack was asking a question, what tools are in place? I'm not sure if you just answered that, but in what regards? Tools for what specific niche, Jack? But I'll also
legal
answer,
protection he was asking.
Okay. Who checks for copycat designs? Oddly enough, the crowd can do that. The crowd does it, and the crowd can be essentially hired to do that. One of the great things about the crowd is that there's a lot of them, and so they can go out and they can do a lot more checks. In fact, one of the people I was talking to, Jojo Roy, he worked at a $300 million company, and they crowdsourced the name of a new company or a new division. And so they had a bunch of people suggesting names, which is a lot, it's real similar to suggesting designs. But they suggested names for this $300 million company, and you're thinking, man, all of the legal risks. But the crowd had to self-validate to make sure the name was available, make sure that name didn't mean something in another language, like the Chevy Nova, which means no-go. So because there's a crowd, you can get a lot more stuff done. There's a lot more eyes to look for copycats.
I want to respect everyone's time. It is the top of the hour. So if you need to jump off, and that includes our panelists, please do. But there is a question here from Atlanta, Georgia, and the question is, how does co-creation work with medical devices that are regulated by FDA or other bodies?
I could speak to how co-creation works, how it result to FDA. That would take a medically trained person, like maybe yourself, Joe, or Alex. But the co-creation would work the same way. You would just have to respect FDA's requirements. I know that's probably not a very good answer. Is there someone who can touch on the FDA's requirements?
Well, I can.
Go ahead.
I can speak to it briefly. I mean, we've had a couple of situations where we needed to get the FDA involved already, and essentially, you know, obviously there's you know, their regulations and requirements, but the benefit of just a simple conversation, you know, when you have an open line where you can say, hey, is this going to work, has been really beneficial for our relatively non-professional developers of FDA-approved devices. So, you know, we had the EndoGoddess app, you know, made by a clinical endocrinologist. She wanted to get through the FDA, wanted to be a sidecar app on the Agmatrix meter, and they said, you know, so we, you know, I went through my channels that I know over there, and we got a letter saying, hey, it's okay, you can be a sidecar app, you know, just make sure you don't, you know, hit these, you know, care recommendation guidelines, and that you're only having a positive effect, no other effect on clinical care, and you don't have an issue. So that helped them forge their partnership with Agmatrix, and it made it happen. Now, in more complicated situations where you're in a, you know, stage 1, stage 2 clinical trial, what have you, I don't know what's going to happen there, but the feedback I've gotten so far is that if you have a crowd of people saying this needs to exist, we support this, you know, thing, this device being created, and you have their ear a lot more than just a regular individual researcher, clinician, or inventor, in a different way. Because remember, these guys are all appointed by politicians, and they listen to the people. That's their job. So when the crowd cares, I think FDA is going to pay a lot more attention for a particular device.
Joe, I want to be respectful of everyone's time, so I think we should end now, but I want to say that I really enjoyed our time, and I want to be a resource to anybody. So if you guys have any follow-up questions, please reach out to me, david@dailycrowdsource.com.
David, Steve, Alex, and everyone who joined us today, I also got a great deal out of this hour, and thank you for extending a discount to our members. So that's MDG13 gives 25% off Crowdopolis registration. And once more to reiterate, I will have a replay of this presentation as well as the slides and a transcript. And I will email a link to all of you as soon as it is ready. Thank you very, very much for joining.